So one, just to be cute, is, have you seen Interstellar?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right? So the black hole was something to surrender into. And when you surrendered into the black hole, you have this boom expansion of your concept of reality and time. And then everything is evolved and everything makes sense. So when that black hole, Saturn return, dark night of the soul, challenge, somebody hits your car, cuts you off, whatever, comes at you, can you fully surrender into it and allow it to move you in the current? Or do you paddle really hard and realize, oh, the current's stronger, I'm going to strengthen my muscles. That's my choice. That's what makes sense now. So it's a really interesting question, alchemy. Damanhur has a school of alchemy, and defining alchemy, if you watch Full Metal Alchemist, one of the best shows about alchemy, despite, how much is fiction and real, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, I'd recommend a bit more. It's based on the original manga, but both are excellent shows. You look at this idea of transmutation, and the principle in that show, which I think is really good for us to think about, is there is a transmutation of energies, non-physical into physical, physical into a different type of physical. So in Damanhur, in their alchemy school, and they have like a 3-day preview, it's a school that you can take 3 weeks all at once, or you can take it like in monthly sessions, depending on where you live, or do like a 3-day preview, which is the first 3 days of the longer curriculum. One of the things that they offered when I took it is how to create a potion. They're like, ooh, yay, real magic, let's make potions. So say, for example, that goji berries, say this was just started out as water, right? Just say reverse osmosis, pure water. And I held it, I sent a very strong intention, I'm a powerful wizard, somebody drinks it and they feel elation, or their wounds heal instantly, or their thoughts shift slightly more positively, depending on how powerful it is, which of course is a co-creative experience. So now let's look at a higher element of divinity, a higher element of alchemy, saying, well, I'm going to take my thought of goji drops and everything required to make this bottle, the paper, the ink, the glass, the rubber, and I'm going to, through quantum stuff, through sacred geometry stuff, through chi, through intention, through influencing the aspects of myself of that are oversouls and that are individual souls under that, to create goji drops and whisper in somebody's ear the inspiration and reveal to somebody in a dream or intuition or signal that there's a mind that they can get certain metals from that are related to like the shininess of the ink here. And so all of these things, but for most of us, practically, alchemy is about transmutation. And a lot of teachings and writings say, well, it has nothing to do with physical metals, it has to do with your soul. What does it mean if your soul is lead, is tin, is gold? And so there's a lot of maps when you look online, what are the qualities of a soul that elevates, ascends from bronze to silver to gold? And then you could say to light at higher levels. So alchemy really doesn't have a limit. And you could call chemistry a type of alchemy. You could call psychology a type of alchemy. But in Damanhurian purposes, it is really a school of directly applied magic. So at higher levels, you experiment with time. At higher levels, you, as mentioned, create chimeras, create beings, which again is a hermetic principle, a hermetic technique, or technique discussed in hermetics. And so learning and understanding alchemy is just realizing we do it all the time. Digestion is alchemy. And so breaking it down, what type of alchemy do we want to learn and why? Do we want to have it as a spiritual perspective of purification and enhancement of our character, of our spiritual nature, a transmutation of stuff in the physical world? Or you could say both, as you purify your body and your mind and your spirit from stuff, release traumatically trapped emotions, lose the body fat that was trapping the cortisol that stored them, clear out your heavy metals, which could cause mood instability. You purify your body, your mind, and your spiritual expression. So all of it is together. And I feel that as we learn to purify and enhance and refine ourselves into gold, if we choose, we can also learn more and more magic around the world, which is why if you look at a lot of systems of waking up, they often include growing up with them, which is referenced in that spiritual maturity of not reacting to stimuli, to insults, to compliments, because your self-image is so held in vibration and so held in knowing that everything around you, as a dance. And one thing I would add, maybe this is, item number 11 on the list, I wasn't keeping track, but say somebody insults you. Jeffrey Martin is a really amazing human. He said he sold his first company at 14, and for years he researched mystical traditions and created this thing called Finder's Course. So if somebody messages me, I can give them some info. But Finder's Course is a system where you do all these meditative practices, and some like 73% of people wake up, have enlightenment, and have it be stable. And his regular scientific-y, secular term for that is persistent non-symbolic expression. And once when we talked, he said, well, that's stage 4, and there are actually higher stages. And stage 5 is when you choose to go back into emotion and feel positive emotion. And so maybe somebody insults you, and you're like, I love you. And now, does that love piss them off? Does that love level them up? You know, it depends on a bunch of factors. But if you actually get positive emotion and experience more emotions, a lot can be said for, are you really at those higher levels, or are you even higher? And I'd like to state that, or posit that we're higher. That once we realize we create and choose this experience, maybe we want to choose to feel sadness, to empathize with somebody, to work with that energy, to infuse it into a potion. Maybe we realize somebody we live with is blocking their sadness with anger. And if they felt sadness, it would help them release it. And if we do a healing session with them and allow ourselves to feel sad and have the mirror neurons offer sadness, that maybe their nervous system could realize it's safe to feel sadness, it's safe to be vulnerable, it's safe to release this stuff and let it go. So in some of my videos, I do that, and I hold worry. And to do that, I need to feel a little bit of worry to hold that frequency. So I feel like at higher levels, as we approach mastery, we have more control over emotions. And it isn't just being a placid cow, but it's allowing ourselves to ride certain waves. Just we are always, always in command and control and choice of what we feel.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that. I definitely agree with it. And I think that there's a distinction to be made because, when you have sadness, let's say your little tiny puppy gets hit by a car, you're going to feel sad. You're not supposed to like, oh, I'm totally fine. I'm not sad. Like we're having a human experience. We have emotions. And I think that there's a danger when people will like, try to law of attraction or positive think away something that's terrible. Now it's not like, but it depends. Like, let's say you lose your job. I use this analogy on one of my buddies that I'm coaching. And I was like, you could lose the contract and be like, okay, great, no problem. You know what I mean? Something better is going to come. That can be a real thought. And you could also, if you want, be pissed off about it for a second. Just don't stay there. You're allowed to be human. You know what I mean? Like, but if you get stuck in that state, then that's a little bit destructive. If something serious happens and, a family member is hurt, you're going to feel a certain way, and we shouldn't like shun it away. And I think some people are teaching that, and that's not my view, but we need to understand it kind of goes to materialism versus possibly realism, if that makes sense. Or just like, okay, my car got hit, I can lose my mind, or I can be like, oh, okay, cool. Like that's totally fine. It's a material object. Everybody's okay. I'm okay. I don't need to get all this wild emotion. But if you're at the stage where you are in anger and things like that, just try to see, analyze that for a second, dive in, get to the root of it. And you can use that as a catalyst because it'll go down into like your core issues and beliefs of fear and security and stuff like that. And you can use it as a tool to go into the depths, like the darkness and the alchemy of yourself, to find a piece of information that you don't want to look at. If you cover it, and you can cover it with anger, you can cover it with frustration, you can cover it with any different thing. But if we just kind of dive in and then release it, we're finding information, kind of like, the diamond in the rough scenario. But I think you want to say something, so go for it.
It's a very subtle thing to have a tragedy occur and to look at the reaction and to call that proper or improper. I was in the ICU when a good friend was in the process of leaving his body from a ketamine overdose. And a lot of people in the community were there. Some were crying, some were just in shock. And I was feeling different emotions. And for part of it, I felt elation because I was tuned into his soul. And he was so happy to be out of his body. And as a channeling a medium are very, very close, I could feel, he's like, hey guys, don't worry. I'm doing the backstrokes in heaven. I'm all good. And so just like you could say, what's your baseline strength? Can you curl 20 pounds, or does curling 20 pounds really hard for you? Well, how about 10? How about 5? How about 1? And so if something happens, death of a child, death of a parent, somebody runs over your puppy, it's totally fine to accept the fact that you cannot curl 80 pounds. You may not have whatever you think may need to be present for you to stay in pure joy when that happens. And I think what maybe what you're saying is it's okay to recognize that you can lift a 10-pound weight, and this is a 50-pound weight, so you really feel it, and it's okay to feel it and be human. But I would also offer that if you know you can curl 80 pounds no problem, and you know you're choosing to react with anger, sadness, whatever, one thought is just be aware of why are you making that choice. And if you look at neuroplasticity, if you think a certain way, it's easier to have that thought again. You build those neural grooves. So I'm of the opinion, at least for myself, that if something happens and I can choose higher, more positive emotions or lower ones with full authenticity, I want to choose higher ones because I want to stay in the upward spiral of habits and neural grooves, the 3D brain reflection of all this other stuff, of choosing to have everything support my evolution leveling up. Where this can get tricky is when people try to convince themselves, oh, I should feel better. Well, there's no should. If you can't curl 80 pounds, if your body just doesn't have the mechanics, if you don't have command over the chi and you cannot do it, there's no negative judgment about you can't do it, and saying you should do it makes no sense. If I told you that you should be able to lift a car with your little finger 500 times in a row, that would be ridiculous unless, I know you can do that and you want to. And I know you can at a higher level, but, just being super 3D for a second.